In the meantime, reactions have continued to trail the planned release of 42,000 metric tons of grains nationwide by the Nigerian government. The presidency had on Friday said that the 42,000 metric tons of grains it promised for nationwide release 2 weeks ago are being bagged for distribution. It said the remaining 60,000 metric tons of grains would be purchased from the Rice Millers Association of Nigeria. As a temporary response to the nation's growing food crisis and the rising price of commodities, President Bola Tinubu on February 8 ordered the immediate release of 102,000 metric tons of various grain types from the Strategic Reserve and the Rice Millers Association of Nigeria. Deliberations began in earnest after angry youths and women took to the streets of Minna, the Niger State capital, and Kano to protest what they described as the rising cost of living in the country. Similar protests also erupted in Ondo State, Niger's southwest. Joining us on the news to discuss this is Chukwuma Okenwa, who is a political analyst. It's nice to have you around on the news. Can you please unmute your device so that we can hear you properly?
Yes. It is unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course, we can hear you now. Now, this is not the first time that the federal government would have to dialogue with the organized labor union in Nigeria over minimum wage and other realities, stark realities facing Nigerians at this time. But now the Nigerian government is saying that the NLC should at least call off the strike. Do you actually support that? Do you think it is time at this point to call off the industrial action?
Well, I think in every situation, there should always be room for dialogue. Over time, like from experience, it's been proven that some of those strike actions has not really led to sustainable results. So I think it's time for the Nigerian Labour Congress to get back to the table of dialogue. But beyond that, I do not see the intent of the government as coming up with a sustainable approach towards addressing what NLC is crying out for, which is the increased hardship, making it very difficult for workers to serve creditably. And I think the government would have come up with better initiatives rather than like maybe treating Nigerians as though we are in a war situation.
Well, I'm talking about
handle citizens with
Yeah, talking about the way government treats its people, we look at it from the sub-national level. Now, the Lagos State Police Command has vowed to crack down on protesters disrupting traffic flow in the city. Now, what do you make of these usual threats by the police in a democratic setting where it is the right of the citizens to protest and express their grievance?
Well, that is completely unacceptable and least expected. It is a kind of an assured right in the Constitution, the right to peaceful protest, the right to freedom of association, and of course, freedom of expression. And when you say citizens should not assemble, should not protest under the guise that they are going to disrupt the traffic, what about the fact that like Lagos is renowned for the traffic even without protest? So we are talking about people trying to get the attention of the government, trying to tell the government to live up to its promises and its responsibilities, as provided for in the Constitution, which should fundamentally be to protect the welfare and, of course, the security of the citizens. And all of this we've seen collapse within 8 months, and the government really needs to rise as quickly as possible to defend the dignity of Nigerians, right to dignity, right to decent living.
Okay, well, in the light of this economic crisis, what compromises do you expect the government and the organized labor to reach in terms of realistic demands and the wage that is said to be payable by government? So at least we can have a bit of peace and people can find reprieve in these trying times.
Yeah, I think the government must, as a matter of fact, speed up action to honor its own part of this negotiation. These negotiations has been ongoing, but of course also we've seen labor coming up with some other positions that doesn't also seem well for the economy, such as saying the government should pay up to ₦1 million. I think what every stakeholder should be thinking now is how to strengthen the value of Naira, because Naira have indeed lost its purchasing power. That should be the first concern of the Labour Congress and, of course, the government. Secondly, also with the inflation rate, in some cases, even over 30%, we've never had it like this, was like this, like in the past 16 to 24 years, where like maybe within 8 months, like a country's inflation rates is over 30%, in some cases, 28%, in some other products, 21%, and it's all across. And even when you talk about the premium motor spirit, we've never really had it this way. So things are really very difficult. And the government's ability to speed up actions, grant the request of labor, review the conditions of work is reasonably expected.
All right, let's look at social interventions. Now, the government is planning to release about 42,000 metric tons of grains nationwide, and we have seen palliative distributions in the country before now that have been manipulated. Would this have any positive impact on the masses?
It doesn't in any way, because of, I mean, I've come to see that these are clearly conduits through which public funds are lost. All of the interventions that the current administration comes up with seems very strange, very much like taking from the poor to give further to the rich. There isn't any rationale to take away the common thing that the Nigerians, the common incentive that they are enjoying, which is the subsidy. Now, why do I even call it an incentive? Ordinarily, there shouldn't be subsidy, right? But then what should have taken care of issue of subsidy would have been a fully efficient and functional refineries. When the refineries are fully efficient and functional, there won't be any need paying any extra cost, on the fuel, because we own the product. But then since the government failed in its responsibility, this was a way to actually say, well, we see we failed, so let's keep subsidizing until we fix our refineries. So since that wasn't done, there isn't any rationale to wise the money that governors receive the federal allocation, and then citizens are even suffering to afford the basic things. And then at the end of the day, the schemes that the government is coming up with, sharing this grain, sharing this rice, and like we even see a state governor coming up with a policy to engage mama put to serve 1,000 to 1,500 people food at the level of local government. This is not the robust economic policies that an economically challenged nation like Nigeria, with all of its dire consequences in a time like this is not the kind of interventions we need from a responsible government.
So what kind of intervention, probably you just mentioned one or two, that could help balance the issue and probably just provide support for the people at this time before we begin to see some transformation in the policies that have been rolled out by government?
Yes, I think one of the things the government must do speedily, first and foremost, we'll have like the first, robust private refinery. But then report has it that the government is not even cooperating. The government is not even leveraging on that advantage. We need Dangote refinery to function fully. And the implication is that it's going to meet our local demands and even like that of the regional demands of African countries. Second, the president before now, when he removed the subsidy, promised that the refinery at Port Harcourt is going to be fully functional by December. That has not happened, right? So we want all the refineries to be fully efficient and functional. I mean, Nigeria has long operated a monolithic economy because we are blessed with the oil. We've been the only oil OPEC nation that import up to 95%, and that is not sustainable. Before you even talk about diversifying, nations that own oil first leverage on its potentials, develop infrastructure, develop every other areas of the economy before you talk about that, divestment. But it does appear that our leaders has not leveraged on the potentials of the oil. It has appeared that the oil boom has become our doom, and it's simply because we've not borrowed a template that some other nations used. And core on those templates would be to get your refineries efficient, because no government that is interested in growth sells its raw materials. What you do is to refine and then sell the refined version. I give you an instance. I could sell a basket of orange for 2,000.
Okay.
But that 2,000 naira basket of orange could even produce as much as 20 liters of orange juice that can be sold for 40,000 naira, right? So why should someone that owns the oranges choose to refine it elsewhere? And those people are making 40,000 on your product, and you only getting 2,000. I mean, it doesn't make any economic, because things get its value in economics the more it's refined.
Okay.
So I think the government should do better.
Well, we just hope that someday, sometime, the Nigerian government will get it right. Chukwuma Okenwa, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Welcome.